Hey guys, welcome to another Saga Saturday. My name is John Grimsmo, and this is my Director of Operations, Angelo. And today, what are we going to talk about?
Springs.
We're going to talk about springs. I love
stuff.
springs. So for making our Saga pens, there are 2 springs inside here, and we just want to go over them real quick. So, remember when we first came up with the Saga, like 2017, 2018? I thought I could just take apart a couple like Bic pens or whatever and like find some off-the-shelf springs and just order them, right? It turns out there's I don't want to say there's no such thing as off-the-shelf springs, but they're all different, and every pencil or every pen I took apart had a different spring. Even the fancy ones, like here we've got a bunch of old tactile turn pens that have various springs in them, and they're all different, and cheap springs, expensive pens, everything had different springs in it. So we're like, how do we come up with the right, like, we just had an idea in our heads for what this pen needs to feel like, and every spring felt wrong.
You brought a spring in, I forget where it came from, and we tried it, and it functionally worked, everything worked great, but it didn't have the sound or the snap we wanted. It didn't have that, like, the energy required to give it that audible, haptic feel of the return.
Yep, and you want it to feel kind of relatively the same on the depress as well as the retract. Oh, well, we nailed it now.
Yeah, so I remember you brought it to our friends at Hybeck now. Showed up, I believe, because I don't think they had any sort of... they didn't have any... They're a very old school company.
Yeah, so there's a local spring company that I've driven by many times when I used to drive my wife to work. And it was like, Hybeck Spring Company. So when I needed a spring, I was like, I'm going to check out Hybeck. It's a very old school company. We did go there and film a couple years ago, and they have all the old equipment and the old machinist guy that's like click, 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 and adjusting it ever so slightly. And very cool process, and they're very good at what they do. And they can make big springs and small springs. So I found one that kind of felt right, but I forget most of the story. What do you remember?
Yeah, it felt okay, but we wanted more. We wanted it to be a heavier spring, to have exactly 1.5 times
what this one was. I was like, yeah, that's right. We had one together, and I was like, it's just not. I need it to be stronger than this. So he took that spring, he measured it, he measured the coil diameter, how many coils, counted the coils, the length, and all that stuff with that information, and the spring steel we wanted, some variation of stainless steel that he both had in stock and that worked well for our application. He was able to come up with our first sample piece, which we still have. So this is now our gold standard. So if we ever need to make more springs, V1 comp original sample. That's our standard. But I mean, all kinds of different springs that we've played with over the years to try to do our process. Okay, so you got your tip spring at the tip, which is what it has to fit perfectly around the specific ink that we're using, the Schmidt 900. It has to be the right length so that the pen has, just the right amount of tips stick out and the right feel and everything. And then you also have your retract spring at the top that we started with all these different variations of springs. Boop, 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 boop. Buying springs from McMaster, trying to cut them, trying to like...
Taking them from pilfering things.
Trying to bend them and like make them what we want. We ended up going with a Smalley wave spring, which I have a bag full of them right here. So this is a wave spring made of a flat coil of wire. I just lost one. Which is a really cool way to make a very low profile spring with a good spring tension. And these are relatively off the shelf springs that we use. They're made of a stainless steel and they're heat treated. You can tell kind of the blue color in them. And it did take some experimentation to find the right length. There's an L1, there's an L2, different diameters. And they work awesome. So we buy thousands of these now, baggies. And that goes in the slider mechanism, which locks the slider up and lets you push it down. So you're fighting that spring pressure down on the way down. But that's what makes the slider go up. And between those 2 springs, it makes the pen what it is.
Yeah, the 2 forces.
So I do think it's funny to have a box of... We ordered 10,000 springs in our latest order. Should last us a little while. Yeah, and it was really cool to go to the factory and be able to see how they make this and the choices they make when dialing in the tolerances and their scrap rate and things like that, and how they determine that.
You had these made for different inserts, I believe.
That's right.
Because different inserts might require different...
Exactly, yeah. There was a Mont Blanc insert that we wanted to use, never got around to using, that needed I forget the difference, but like... Shorter. Yeah, significantly shorter, 30-40% shorter, possibly a different diameter, that... because the tip might have been stubbier in that case, to make the pen kind of do what you want, because the spring affects a lot of stuff.
Yep.
You don't want to bottom out the spring, you don't want to do that, you want just that right amount of feel. So,
and also the profile inside of that tip is a seat for that spring too, that you've designed in. Mm-hmm. So if there's any changes to anything, it kind of changes it all, and it's kind of guided by that insert. Kind of determines the shape of it, and then the weight, like the poundage, I guess.
Yeah.
Was determined by, we wanted a feel. It needed to, like, the knives have a very distinctive, as you guys all know, very distinctive, sound to them and feel to them, and they're very positive feeling. It's very, it's got that haptic feedback when you're just like playing with it, but it's also, very mechanical feeling. It's smooth, which you want. You want it smooth and mechanical, and you got to bridge that.
You want that same thing from the pen. You want that sound to reverberate through the metal and the mechanism, and you just want to make a enjoyable product.
Yep.
There's all different kinds of springs too. Like our knives have springs in them. The clip has spring tension to it. The lock bar is bent in a certain way, so we're creating a spring from this little cutout right there. Mm-hmm. So the thickness, the web of that, and the length of it, the length of the arc.
Clips on these.
The clips on the pen, yeah.
Yep, and we actually, they curl in a little bit when we machine them, so we use the blocks on the lathe to bend this into the right location as a spring, because there's a lot of spring back on this piece, so there's technically 3 springs on this.
Look at that.
2 more conventional, if you want to call it wave spring conventional. But yeah.
And a lot of times we'll test the spring of the clip with a piece of paper, and we'll like give a feel. If there's a gap, like I know my personal Rask has a gap here. That's not right. This is a scrap clip. I found it in a box somewhere here. That's not right. So I got to bend this clip and make it springier down, because that tap literally bothers me. Yep. But our knives don't go out like that. This is just my bad example.
And this is pretty easy to bend back if somebody catches this on something.
So
it's a spring. So
explain this spring to me, because a lot of people, when they don't know the knife and I tell it to them, they ask, "How do you bend titanium?"
I mean, you
can just bend it. But people don't know that. Like,
I mean, you got to go past that point of you're going to plastic deformation a little bit.
Right. Titanium's a springy material, right?
Yeah. It's got a lot. It can be used as a spring. I don't know if anybody's familiar with mountain biking. Titanium springs are pretty popular.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. On some of the oil coil shocks. On the rears, we'll use titanium. It was kind of popular for a bit until they had some of the more silicone alloy steels that they use now. But yes, titanium is a great spring. It's got a lot of elasticity to it. It pops back nicely.
So basically, it'll spring to a point, and then it always bends back to the right spot.
Yep.
But if you go past that, you plastically deform it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we just have to keep it under there in the elastic state, the elastic zone when you're using it, and it should be fine.
So a lot of metals like aluminum or something don't have a very good spring.
Yeah, there's
properties.
no. Yeah, exactly.
But
their elasticity is pretty low.
And that's where, if you want to get very technical, very engineering, you can do all the math for all of this. It's literally science.
Yeah, material science.
Yeah.
I'm not a material science engineer, but there's a lot of them out there, and they know what they're doing.
No, a huge industry I respect. So yeah, just a couple examples of springs. Even a clickable Sharpie, which we love these pens, fine point Sharpie, has a spring inside. I don't think I've torn one apart yet to find it, but I'm kind of curious now.
Yeah. I mean, it shows, the lengths we go to make things feel right, to sound right, to have that right feedback to you, because we don't want it to just be some flimsy, light feeling thing. It's got to feel like you're doing something with it.
Without being overpowering and annoying.
Yep.
We want that fidget factor where it's just comfortable and it's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of thought goes into this stuff. So hopefully this series of videos, Saga Saturdays, they've been very fun to make. We'll keep making them. I've got 20 more ideas at least for more Saga Saturdays coming up. So yeah, it's fun to do. All right, guys.
Awesome.
Later.
Flush one down, it whirls around. 999 springs to flush down.